Hello, everybody. Justin Mack here. I got George Ray, our LED Solutionist engineer. Here today, we're here to talk today about the NovaPro UHD Jr and going over some of the features. So, George, with the NovaPro product line, there's tons of different control options for LED. Why the UHD Jr? Why this big black box?
So the big black box starts out as a 4K LED controller and then adds a full-featured 4K scaling processor in front of it, all in one package for one very reasonable price.
And so, this is something when NovaPro launched the MCTRL 4K controller, that was one of the biggest things is there was no inboard scaling. So you'd have to use the controller and then you'd have to have a 4K scaler in front of it. Exactly. And for the longest time, there was really only one option for a 4K scaler, and that was the analog way via 4K. Mm-hmm. So you'd have the via 4K and the MCTRL 4K in one box, and this is basically both of those units combined in one box.
Exactly.
So what are some applications? Is this for more of a fixed installation product? Is this a rental and staging product? What kind of applications would we use this particular device on?
In the permanent installation, one of the key features that the UHD Jr has is it supports 12G video. So it supports full 4K 60 video on a single BNC connector. It has two inputs for 4K 60, so two 12G physical connections on the back. So if you have a broadcast plant that is transitioning over to 12G, either in a house of worship or a broadcast studio or a production center, it is a perfect solution for that. 12G is fixed at a 16:9 aspect ratio. And many times our LED walls are not pixel for pixel going to match that. You need to scale a little bit sideways or a little bit top and bottom. This box does all of that internally, and for broadcast solutions, it includes GenLock. So you can GenLock it to your plant's sink and feed multiple 12G signals into it. The same is true if you're doing rental staging and you're doing a festival where a broadcast truck is providing the feeds for your main screens. 12G in, LED out, all in one compact package.
So we talked a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the ins and outs.
Absolutely.
We'll go ahead and spin this around.
Spin away.
Here we go. Let the audience at home take a look at the back. George, let's go over why don't you go over some of the inputs, outputs, sure, and some of the connectors on the back of this unit.
So at the bottom of the unit, we have the 16 LED outputs. So it's a standard NovaPro system, 655,360 pixels per port. There's 16 ports. That's enough to drive a 4K 3840 by 2160 display. Above that, we have some of the input connections over here. So you have two 12G SDI inputs, both with loop 3. You have a display port and an HDMI input. And then up here, for older legacy products, you have 4 DVI inputs, which you can mosaic together. So if you have, for instance, an analog way ascender, which puts out 4K, and the easiest way to do it on that is across 4 DVI connectors. Yep. Bring them in here, link the 4 DVI connectors, and you have multiple options in how they're configured, left, right, top, bottom, 4 quadrant, and bring in your legacy equipment. So it allows you to take some of that older 4K switching devices and upgrade them to drive a single display in a single box, as opposed to doing the 4660 processors or the 4660 Pros.
So with this unit, with the multiple inputs, can you switch between inputs?
Yes. So you can switch between the inputs. The switching can be done 2 ways. You can do it from the front panel, or you can use the VCAN software. So on the front panel, there is a series of direct connection buttons for each of the inputs. So it's literally press the button, input switches. You don't have to menu dive to find the input select. So we have our source inputs right here. You also, to the side of the input selection buttons, you see the front screen. If this is sitting backstage in a rental staging event, the front screen provides you information about the input resolution, the wall resolution, what your control signals are, make sure all your ports are active, and you've got connection to the LED.
So a user who's familiar, let's say, with the HD Pro or the MC TRL 4K, they're going to be pretty familiar with the GUI layout of the HD Junior.
Yes, the GUI layout on the front panel control is basically the newer, smarter, happier brother of the MC TRL 4K. It's very similar, just has some more features.
So I know you can switch between the controller and the front panels. What if the controller is in a remote location and I want to switch inputs? Is there a way to do that remotely?
Yes. So the first thing I would start with is you cannot switch using NovaStar Smart or NovaStar LCT. The scalar functionality is not available to those two pieces of software. So if your technician finishes setting up the LED using either Smart or Nova LCT, they're going to go, oh, I can't control the front panel. No. There is a piece of software, which I'm going to pull up on my laptop, called NovaStar VCAN. It is available on the public-facing NovaStar website. It is their switcher control software. And VCAN allows you control of layering, positioning, and input selection. VCAN works over USB or over a network. So it can be in a remote machine room. As long as you're connected via Ethernet to it, you're good to go.
So the VCAN software, do I have to have a PC? If I'm a Mac guy, can I use it on a Mac? Does NovaStar care, or is it?
VCAN is part of the new NovaStar software team where they are simultaneously developing for Mac and for PC. So it is available for both Mac platform and a PC platform natively. It is not web-based like some of the other scalars manufacturers. It is a dedicated application, but available on both platforms.
Perfect. So the functionality of the VCAN software, so explain what can be done with the VCAN software from a laptop, what you can do with it, how you can control the scalar, what can be done with layers, backgrounds. Let's just go over a little bit about what can be done.
So I have VCAN open right now. I have pre-programmed my LED wall. So I'm going to go in here and just clear everything. And what you see on my desktop screen right now is the LED wall. So that's my LED tiles and gives you your pixel space to put an input up on the display. You select over here on the left-hand side of the screen from any of the input sources. You literally click and drag it over, and then you get an instant layer of that source. If I wanted, because the UHD supports a second pip, I can grab a second input. So I will grab one of the 12G inputs, drag it over, you get a second window. So you can put the windows on your display. You can freely grab and scale the windows using the mouse, or over on the right-hand side, using the layer properties, you can actually type in the exact pixel size that you want it to be. So you can be very precise. After you've created your layout, one of the things that switcher operators always want is, okay, I've got my layout designed. Down here at the bottom are the presets. So you can save that design and recall it when needed. To save a preset, like this one right here, I select a preset number, I click the Save button, little green bar highlights and says, hey, it's saved. To recall a preset, you select the preset, do load, it says, are you really sure? And you load the preset. So I'll go back to that one we just created. Here, load, are you really sure? Yes.
Perfect.
So we have presets. You also have the ability to put under this OSD screen a background color. So you can get a solid color background behind your content, so you have your two pips and not just against a boring black pixel.
Can you also do like an image background?
Yes, but the functionality has been deprecated recently, so they're working on bringing it back in a more robust manner.
Okay.
So for now, I would stay with the solid colors. The graphic background was there and evidently went away, and the answer I got was, oh yes, we're working on it.
So, with this having a built-in scaler, let's talk a little bit about latency, because we know that anytime
Sure.
you have a unit that has scaling or any kind of image manipulation, it's going to add latency. So what kind of latency are we looking at with the UHD Jr?
So the scaler side has 1 to 2 frames of latency. You got to have 1 frame in order to be able to scale, and then it could be as much as 2. There is a low latency function, and that applies to the LED side. So I'm going to open up Smart, and we'll look at the low latency function. So what the low latency function on the LED side does is say, okay, I have a frame or a frame and a half of latency in the scaling side. When I come out of the scaler, I don't want to add any more latency to the system. And to do that, there's what they call a low latency mode. In order to access low latency mode, the first thing you have to do is pre-plan how you wire your cabinets.
Okay.
So every port has to have no more than 512 pixels wide of display. So on my demo display here, I'm using the Abson M29. It's 168 pixels. So I'm doing no more than 3 cabinets wide. So the width of the column of each data port is less than 512 pixels. If you do that, your total latency is 512 pixels. Not lines, not frames, not parts of a frame. It's 1/4, or in 4K mode, it's 1/8 of a line. Basically none. You then have to turn low latency on, which you do from the front panel. You enable low latency mode. The menu will be grayed out if you do not configure the cabinets correctly. It says, nope, can't do it.
So if I'm a technician, I'm trying to configure, I go to low latency, it's grayed out, I know that I've done something wrong.
It's your cabinet port width on one of your ports exceeds 512 pixels.
Now for low latency mode to work on the UHD Jr, do you have anything special in the cabinet? Is there a certain NovaStar receiving card you have to use? Nope.
No, it's all about the loading of the ports, and it's the buffer inside the actual Ethernet port.
So let's talk a little about frame rates. So, traditionally with LED, you'd want everything coming in at 60 hertz.
Yes.
With the UHD Jr, we talked a little about broadcast, 12G. Are there some additional frame rates that you can handle with the UHD Jr?
Yes. So very recently, NovaStar increased the frame rates that they support internally to include 24, 25, 30, 50, 48, 50, 60, and all the drop frame rates, 59.94, 29.97, and even 24 frame drop, which is 23.9 something. So they've added all of those fractional frame rates, and because we now support broadcast gen lock, and your scaler will output at whatever frame rate. So this works in PAL, it works in film. Another comment about frame rates, somebody I was talking to yesterday was talking about he only runs his 4K shows at 30 because of the processor, because of the source, the content. He doesn't want to overtax his computers running at 4K 60. Well, 30 hertz can sometimes be a perceived blinking issue depending on your content and your audience. Well, with the UHD Jr, you can come in 30 and output 60 and get rid of that that low frame rate, oh, I can see some frame stutter.
Yeah.
So the scaler in here can take my computer only does 30 hertz 4K and up it to a full 60 to make it look better to your audience.
It's very, that's a great feature. You know, the talking a little bit about 4K and frame rates. I know that you're for those who don't know, George is constantly a contributor to some of the NovaStar Facebook groups. George provides a lot of great input on there, and it seems that the feature to be able to do drop frame rates is going to be huge, because that seems to be a common issue where people are trying to come in on a drop frame rate, and what they really need in the processor they're using can't do that, and now there's a solution for those type of events. Let's talk a little bit about backup. So, this is the main. There's 16 outputs. This is a 4K box. Now, let's talk a little bit about backup. Do I just, because within this unit you have the LED processor, you also have scalers. That can sometimes get tricky when you're dealing with backups. So if you could let's overview how you do a backup system with this.
So on the back of the unit, over here, are 4 fiber optic output ports. They're SFP modules. Just like the SFP outputs, it's the same SFP that gets used in the MCTRL 4K, the CVT 4KS, and the 660 Pro, and the R5. Same SFP module. Single mode fiber. There's 4 ports. If you're doing a backup system, full redundant hot backup with the UHD Jr, all your sources go into UHD Jr number 1. That's where all your scaling happens. You come out of output ports 1 and 2, which are these 2 right here. They're vertical. Output port 1 handles Ethernet connections 1 through 8. Output port 2 handles 9 through 16. That goes to another UHD Jr. That will actually physically connect to your wall. The scaler in that unit isn't being used. Coming out of output ports 3 and 4, you go to a third UHD Jr. That one is your hot online backup. At that point, you set in the front panel menu, you go into the advanced functions and you set the device as backup. So the first one is set as the primary device, the second one is set as the backup device, and you will have full redundant data backup on your 4K with only one scaler. The only one that's doing any scaling is that principal first connection. You can still enable low latency mode, so you still have 1 scalar's worth of latency. That's it. The other 2 units are merely acting as fiber converters at that point.
Well, that makes sense. So you have basically, the main unit controlling the 1 scaler, because you don't want to have one unit be the main, one be the backup, and then you have 2 different scalers working against each other. You have the main unit, the main scaler, going out to 2 backup units, and they're just basically fiber converters.
Exactly. And given that they're just running the fiber functionality, they...
we have a guest on our show. Juan, thank you for coming in. Would you like to say something to the audience?
Hello.
All right.
Because we're transporting over fiber, you have basically 0 delay on fiber. It's single mode. That allows you to put your scaler with whatever your switcher source is, and you have the limitation of you cannot go more than 6.5 kilometers to your LED displays.
6.5 kilometers, that's like what, 9 miles?
It's
12 miles?
0.6, so it's about 3.5, 4 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 miles.
Let's talk a little about, I read online there's a clone feature.
Yes. So clone feature is exactly what it sounds like. I have an LED display. I want an exact duplicate of it on stage left. I have a stage right display, I want a stage left display. Again, utilizing the fiber outputs of the primary NovaPro UHD Jr. You hook the fiber 1 and 2 up to a second UHD Jr. that drives your stage right wall. 3 and 4 hook up to a third UHD Jr. driving your stage left wall. On the front panel in advanced configuration, you set it to the optical mode you set from hot backup, you change it to clone mode, and then you get a full redundant clone screen. So festival dates, you can do stage left, stage right. The communication again is from the main control unit, which can live over with video processing or in the video truck. Fibers go out to stage left and stage right. They drive the walls. The two walls are exactly the same. Your setup time is, I program one screen, I'm done.
That's great. So, you know, the clone mode kind of works similar to the backup mode,
Yes.
where you have the main unit driving two 4K walls. The main unit is your scaler, does all your color. Everything's done in the main unit, out via fiber to the two other HD Juniors to actually just, you know, convert the data and drive the walls.
Exactly.
All right. Any other features you'd like to tell the video audience out there about the UHD Junior? I think we covered everything I had on my list.
So we have mosaic mode, optical backups, 4K in and out, multiple 4K signals in. I can tell them I have tested this all the way down to taking a 3840 by 2160 display and shrinking it to roughly 200 pixels wide. The scaler is a top-notch scaler, very easy to control. Everything is accessible from the front panel. The one thing that the technicians will need to get used to is using VCAN to control the scaling and pip functions if you want to control it remotely from a laptop. The front panel, however, is very easy to operate. We have all the usual LED capabilities, so you can store the RCFG files, you can program the wall from the front panel. Genlock, universal power, so 110, 208 power. It's pretty much a really nice, very cost-effective scaling processor for everything up to and including 4K.
And we have them in stock, ready to ship. So
Yes.
we're standing by with your orders. All right, well, thank you everybody for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to learn a little bit more about the UHD Junior. If you guys have any questions, please just let us know. Reach out to either George or myself at Evolve Media Group, and we'll be glad to answer your questions and help you out with anything that you need NovaStar related.